What up, y'all? Welcome to Pics. It didn't happen. I am Fats King. I am always joined by my brother, the Yeti. I am also joined by a close personal friend. This is Anthony Stallings. If you want to say hi, what's up?
Hey there, I'm Anthony, here to talk with everybody.
Um, we brought him on here today because he has a experience in something that I also have an experience in, and that's opioid addiction. And mostly, what we're here to talk about is the show on Hulu, Dope Sick, and how after watching it, it's kind of really opened up some old wounds, and how I kind of feel like I have to talk about some things.
Yeah, it's definitely a rough watch.
So if you're expecting this to be one of our usual episodes, it will not be.
Yeah, if you're not comfortable with these kinds of discussions, maybe skip this video.
It,
Come back
it,
later.
it wouldn't hurt my feelings if you did.
Yeah, so you've been warned.
But so anyway, as we were talking about, this show that's on Hulu called Dope Sick is about the very powerful opioid painkiller Oxycontin. And what you'll learn if you choose to watch this is the absolutely predatory way that this drug was gone about in the way it was sold, in the way it was hawked to doctors, in the way that they were supposed to sell it to us. Um, Before OxyContin, there were painkillers, but it was morphine was the only real there was the only real big opioid painkiller that you'd seen prescribed, and it was only for like real major surgeries and shit like that. uh what you learn from this is, and if you weren't there this was the beginning of what we now are living in, what's known as the opioid crisis.
Yeah.
And the reason why this happened is because doctors were told that this drug, this powerful narcotic, which is no different than heroin in any way, they're the same family, was being prescribed for fucking headaches and migraines and tooth pain.
Yeah, it was supposed to be safe, and they're gonna rid the world of all the pain, and it was gonna be this miracle.
You just said it right there. The word pain. They took the word pain and they found a way to make money off of it.
Yeah.
The language and the double speak and the outright lies that this company, Purdue Pharma, which is in Indiana, where we're fucking from, go figure. Just like I said, predatory is the only word I can use to describe it. They made not millions, billions with a fucking B off of the suffering and death of Americans. I would love to see them brought up on treason or war crimes, but we can't do that. And it's this is the story. Like I said, if we're talking about the show, it's the story. It shows the perspective of, what was it, 4 addicts?
I think so, yeah.
3 or 4 addicts, and a couple lawyers who were trying to prosecute this fucking company,
and just how difficult that actually was to do.
And the reason why it was made so difficult: money. These
always.
rich cocksuckers literally greased every palm possible to get everything they needed to be able to sell this drug the way they wanted to. They told their representatives that it was okay for them to tell doctors that they needed to double dose their patients. If it wasn't working, take more. And it was all off the back of this coating, this time release coating that's supposed to make it to where the drug it would go through your system evenly for 12 hours, is what the
claims were.
It's what the idea was. And as an addict, I'm gonna tell you, it's real easy. All you had to do was put the shit in your mouth for about 5 seconds to dissolve the coating, and then you can do whatever the fuck you wanted with it, and you now have 12 hours worth of fucking an opioid right there in the palm of your hand. And to imagine, just think about it now. These people were going to their doctor, and their doctor was being told by every representative and every medical clinic and every medical fucking journal that it was okay to prescribe this to someone because they twisted their ankle.
Right. Yeah. And what you find is, well, hell, they're the ones that published half of those things.
Yeah,
and they were all bought
that's
off.
what everybody was found out. There's all these studies, all these fucking things were done in the name, and Purdue Pharma was the one that had paid for it all. In those cases, and then there were cases where there were just outright lies that they printed. They were told they couldn't print
Yeah,
it,
yeah.
and then they printed the outright lies. Uh, uh, this is based on true events, and this is all true. You can Google it. You can look it all up. One of the doctors involved, his name was Sam Fenix, and this was played by the amazing Michael Keaton.
Yeah.
And they showed how he himself, as a doctor, was was injured and prescribed OxyContin, and he himself became not just an addict, but a fucking full-blown legitimate, for the rest of his life, addicted to this shit.
Yeah, and that's kind of the overall theme, and what we really want to talk about is how no matter who you are, from the people that are making this to the people that are taking it, their parents,
This
the
touched you.
doctors,
This touched everyone you know.
everybody.
This touched everyone you know. Everyone knows someone who was strung out on this shit.
Yeah.
And because since it was they never looked at it as this was the mental health issue. This was criminals. It wasn't the people who were taking the drug responsibly. It was the people who were abusing it. And then you find out, and this is what most people found out, there was no real way to take this drug responsibly, because the minute you took it, you're already fucking hooked, whether you know it or not. And it was hard watching this, knowing what I know. And I just wanted to bring this up because it touched me. This show gave a great way to describe and explain what withdrawals feel like musically. Now let me explain that. What I mean is, there would be scenes where it would show this guy who was having hardcore withdrawal symptoms. He's got the itches, he's sweating, he's not doing good, and there's this song quietly playing in the background. And as the scene gets stronger, and his withdrawals and his need for fucking the oxy is getting stronger, the song gets louder and louder and louder and louder until it's literally all you can hear in the background. And it hit me, and I was like, that is the perfect way to describe how it is. It starts as a small thought, man, really jonesing, and then you go back to, oh, I'm thinking about something else. I'm thinking about myself, man, I'm really jonesing. I'm thinking about something else. Thinking about myself, man, I'm really jonesing. Man, I'm really jonesing. Man, I'm really jonesing. Man, I'm really jonesing. That's all you got. That's all you got, and it gets louder and louder until you physically, you're dizzy, you're cold, you're sweating. You can't fucking believe that a pill has got this much hold on you, but it does. And I fully recommend every addict watch this, because it'll answer some questions for you if you were curious yourself about how this drug was able to be marketed the way it was. And it really touched me. And it, like I said, because of seeing this, I wanted to talk about my own personal experience with addiction. So I don't know, I'd say I was like 18, 19, a little bit. I was just becoming an adult, and I had a friend whose mom had cancer, and she had bad cancer, and she'd gotten through it so many fucking times. But at that time, they were just prescribing that, like I said, they were just prescribing this shit to everyone for everything. So if you were someone who had terminal cancer, they were just writing you scripts for fucking 40s and 80s like it was, candy. And she hated it. She hated it, how it made her feel. So she would trade it to us for weed, me and all my degenerate friends, or she'd sell it to us for 25 cents on the milligram, as opposed to what it eventually became, which I'll get to that in a second. But I was doing this recreationally, I thought, and I tried to stop. I was like, I'm okay. I don't need to do it. I don't need to do it, because I'd just been smoking weed at that time. I didn't know what a real addiction had felt like. And I just remember all my thoughts being consumed by, I need to do this. I need to do this. I need to do this. And then she stopped getting them. And I'm like, oh shit, what do I do? Well, come to find out, in the 5-mile area radius where I live, there was at least 8 or 9 people who were selling this shit, because you could get it everywhere. It was so easy to find, and people were just like I said, time release coating. It's so safe. Put it in your mouth for a few seconds, pull it out, wipe it on your arm, look for the color. If you see the color, it meant the coating came off. And I started dealing with people, and again, I was just a kid per se. I'd only known weed. This is when I started seeing the real side of real drug dealers and real danger that I found on my own. Weed didn't take me there, so it wasn't a fucking gateway drug in that situation. But as things went on with the way this was, as you watch the show, and as I didn't know this, the reason why it got so hard to fucking find is because the U.S. government itself came down on top of Purdue Pharma and told them they had to really change everything about how they were selling this drug. They had to tell the truth about it. And that was when it really got bad, because when it started becoming hard to find, you couldn't go to pain clinics. That's another thing. Pain clinics were fucked up. People would hit 5 or 6 of them in an area. You know what I mean? They would go in and they'd be like, "Oh man, I tore a muscle in my knee," and they wouldn't even say anything. They would write you a fucking script, and you would move on to the next town that had another pain clinic, and it was so fucking easy. And then all the easiness stopped, because like I said, the US government itself came down on top of Purdue Pharma. And this is when things, like I said, started to get really fucking scary, because there's only one guy who can fucking get them, and he's charging $1 a milligram, $1.50 a milligram. And now what was an easy addiction, I mean, I don't mean easy like it was easy to get through, I mean it was easy to get my fix. This is when I started becoming a hardcore criminal. I started breaking into people's houses. I started taking anything I could get my hands on. I started stealing from family. I really began going down what I consider the darkest road in my life. And I can attribute it all because I wanted fucking Oxycontin and Xanax and Klonopin. And that was something else I found and I seen is a lot of them pharmaceuticals, they all kind of went hand to hand. You use the Xanax to bring you off of the withdrawals from Oxy. You use the Klonopin so you could forget all the horrible shit you were doing. And I just I seen where everybody was going, and when you couldn't find Oxycontin, the only other option was fucking heroin. And I seen my choice in front of me, and the choice was I either get off of this shit entirely or I become a heroin junkie. And that was my line. That was my line in the sand. And I'm one of the lucky ones. I was able to get away from all of the things that were triggering me. I was able to basically run away from that part of my life and clean up entirely. And it only been about a 2-3 year period that I was doing this shit. So I was lucky enough to not have all of my brain receptors rewritten to where I couldn't live without this drug forever. There are some people who the only way they could function was methadone or Suboxone. I'm one of the lucky ones who found a way to get all the way sober. And if you are someone who's still fighting with that shit, it does get better, but you have to try. I guess that's all I got for that part. Anthony, you wanna add anything?
So my story, I started at 17 years old. I was playing football at a private school, and I hurt my back, and that was, prior to that injury, about the strongest thing you could do was a Tylenol 3 with codeine. But when I hurt my back, they had this new drug. It was called Loratab. It had acetaminophen in it. Had a decent amount of hydrocodone in it. And I was 17 years old, and my doctor gave me this prescription because I hurt my back playing football. And I took it, to make the pain go away, and it worked. I was also on ADD meds at the private school that I was at. So I was taking Adderall in the morning and Loratab in the evening at 17 years old, as prescribed by my doctor. After I got out of high school, I mean, playing football for the school that I played at. It's a school of athletes, so we played, and it was very privileged school. So we had doctors and team doctors, and doctors in the stands. It was like you said, it was literally, here's 90 pills, you can play, you can do whatever, and nobody thought twice about it because it was safe enough to give a 17-year-old. It was harmless. I remember the doctor talking to my parents in front of me, hey, he'll be able to perform, he won't hurt so much. I was a big kid, so that's what the doctors told my parents. I got out of high school and started running the streets, and found myself just quite simply because I enjoyed the medicine, buying the medicine off the streets. Along with drinking, I had relationships with doctors that would prescribe it for me. I rode the doctor train quite a bit. I would go and I would get a nerve block in my back just so I could keep my script going. I would get scripts in like 90 to 120 pills a month. I'd usually be through those about 15 days in. So then I would go to the street. I'd buy them off the street when they were cheap. And there was no harm, no foul to it. It was very normalized, I guess you would say. I mean, the guys I ran with were, it was like taking Tylenol. It was like, hey, you get off work and take two because you had a hell of a day, and drink some beer and going down the road. There was no real stigma about it. But one thing that continually happened is I would go back, and I went from 5s to 7.5s. I went from 7.5s to 10s. Then I went to 10s to 20 milligram time release. Then I went to 30 milligram time release. And I still remember what it tastes like to throw 2 of those time release pills in my mouth and chew them up. Because,
that's gross.
Well, the coating that you're talking about, if you chew them up, guess what happens? They go straight to your head.
Yep.
And so I'd throw 2 in my mouth and chew them up, chase it with a beer, and drive to the house. And that's what my life looked like. And that was fine for quite some time until the government started looking at the doctors for why they're prescribing this medicine. And the medicine started to become harder and harder to get prescriptions for, harder and harder to justify. I started having to take drug tests to get my prescriptions. And what they were looking for, ironically, is they wanted to make sure the drug was in my system. They wanted to make sure I wasn't selling it.
And also the right amounts of the drug in your system as well.
Exactly. And I was abusing the shit out of it. Like, I was having to buy pills to take my drug tests because I was out of pills by the time it was time to take my drug test. And I was a big fan of if one is good, 2 is great. If 2 is great, 3 is out fucking standing. And that's how it kind of got snowballed into where it was out of control. And then when it got out of control, I screwed everybody I know. I stole thousands of dollars from my parents. I stole thousands of dollars from my family. I would steal your shit and help you look for it at your house.
Yep. What took what? I don't know what you're talking about. I don't have that.
Yeah.
I never
just because of the people I was running with. I got indicted for 9 felonies when I was 19 years old. The state of Alabama put me up for 3 possessions of breaking and entering, 3 counts of possession of burglary tools, and 3 counts of possession of stolen property. I'm glad to say that I did get exonerated from that. However, it was because I was the wealthiest kid out of the 5. The other 3 guys went up and went to jail because they didn't have any money and they had a public defender. And my parents spent the money and got me an attorney and got me out of trouble. All because I was running the streets trying to stay fucked up.
Yep, constantly.
And really, it wasn't a problem originally because, you know, you could, I mean, every single person I worked with had a bottle. Like it was not, it was never hard to find until it became hard to find. And when it became hard to find, I would, you know, I'd go through your window if you had some. You know, I remember, I feel, I don't really talk about this a lot because I've been sober for 17 years now, and
I don't either.
I work very hard to be, you know, I have 2 kids, I have a wife. I'm not this person anymore, but you know, I remember being at my girlfriend's parents' house and going through their medicine cabinets and shit. I remember being at my girlfriend or somebody's, you know, grandmother's house, and you know, old people have good stuff, so you know, taking all their shit and then getting called on it and being like, "Are you insane?" I'm like, "Why would I wouldn't? I can buy that. Why would I do it?" Knowing full well it was in my pocket.
Yeah.
And I never really, I never really did anything violent, but I 100%
Could have.
uh, I 100% rolled up on people in a way that they thought they were going to get hurt.
Yeah.
And I hurt a lot of people. And the night that I got sober, up until that point, I had no idea. I didn't know about withdrawal. I didn't know about, because I always had money, always had friends, always had the ability to, I guess I was able to be very sketchy, but because of where I came from, I was always able to just kind of navigate my way out of it because I leaned on the fact that I came from a wealthy family and people in town knew that my father was not gonna, you know, my dad loved me and he wanted me to get better, but you know, we went through that period of time where my parents, you know, basically were like, "Don't ever come around again." But one night I went out and was with the person that I was going to marry. Obviously not, I married somebody else. But anyway, went out with her that night. Thought cocaine was a good idea. Obviously, I was out of my tits on Norco at the time that night. That's what I could find, Norco 10s. And anyway, by the end of the night, my house had been trashed and some really, really bad shit happened. And I woke up the next day and I drove myself to Warrior, Alabama to a place called Bradford Health Services and checked myself into rehab. And that's when the fun started.
Well,
so
I wanted to have you on here because, like, I know you said that you felt a little ashamed about that time, and I do too. But I wanted to have you on here because you and we beat it, and we're fucking warriors for beating it. And I know that a lot of addicts, we always look at our dark times and we're ashamed of it. But I also feel like we need to take pride in the fact that we fucking survived.
100%. I went, and any addicts, I hope you have some addicts listening to this. I hope there's some people hurting, because my message is, if you are hurting in addiction right now, there is a better way. If you're hurting in addiction today, you can get better. If you're living under a bridge right now, you can get better.
There is another way around.
I 100% was homeless. I 100% lived on the street. I 100% couch dived. I 100% in my lifetime have eaten meals that most people would not consider food. And I can tell you, sitting in my house today, and I'm not ashamed to say it, sitting in my $500,000 house today, there's a better way. And you can bust your ass and you can work through it. And I say that to say this. I've gone full circle. I've done all the horrible shit that you can do, stuff that I will never talk about. And today I'm sitting in front of these fine gentlemen, not homeless, with a family, and doing stuff that I never thought I'd be able to do from there to here. So it's 100% possible to heal.
So I just want to thank both of you guys for being willing to share these stories.
I mean, you lived it. You have to talk about it.
It's not something that I personally have dealt with. I'm in the category of people that has had people around them affected by it. So I do have stories, as we all do, but they're not my stories. So I will not be sharing those. So I'll pass it back to you because I know there's some things that you want to say.
Well, it's part of the reason a lot of people don't really think about it. Part of the reason why people use to begin with, and it's something that they said on this show. I really do recommend anyone watch this, but they said that it's undiagnosed pain. It's and not just physical pain. It's mental pain. It's things like, and it hit me. I've always known it, but something happened to me as a child, and it came back to me as a young man because I had regressed it, and that was the reason why I'd started to use to begin with. Is I wanted to feel numb. I wanted to feel anything other than the fucking dirty feeling I felt, and it was like it was so easy to fall into this. It was so easy to do, and I'm so goddamn mad at the organizations that were supposed to protect me and other people from what happened to us. And this is the thing. This wasn't like the crack epidemic that happened in big cities. This was in little rural redneck towns, and this company planned it that way. They sent their representatives to the rural parts of Maine, the rural parts of Kentucky, and the rural parts of coal country in Virginia, because this is where people who had on the job injuries in the logging mill and the coal mining and things like that, they really took advantage of how bad these people needed help, and in doing so just decimated small little communities. And you see it. You lived in one of the towns that was
Yeah.
hit by it. I lived in one of the towns that was fucking hit by it. It was everywhere. People who you'd never believe would be strung out on fucking pharmaceuticals. 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds prostituting themselves. This wasn't happening in a big city. This was happening in small little white redneck towns. And it kind of bothers me when I look back in hindsight that why didn't we take these actions against the crack epidemic and things and other drug epidemics the way we really have looked at the opioid epidemic. And the reason why, because the opioid epidemic affected most of the white small rural farm communities, and it forced them to say, oh wow, it isn't just some dirty drug dealer in the big city. It's my cousin, it's my nephew,
Well, yeah,
it's my sister.
That's really, that's what when it finally did, those crackdowns started coming, was after it, all the lies sort of were saw through. Like it's not just these drug addicts. It's everyday people. It's my brother. It's my, the teacher at school. It's everybody.
And that was the thing that like it was happening is you'd start out as, oh, I hurt my back. Oh, I hurt my back becomes, oh, I'm a fucking opioid addict. And the doctors didn't give a shit. The company didn't give a shit. And it took the US government years to give a shit. And by then it was almost too late. And we're still living in the aftermath of something. What was it? What did they say? It was 2000 and
It would had to been like early, like at 2001.
Yeah, I think it was like 2001 because I graduated in 2003. So
Yeah,
that makes
right around
sense.
the
Yeah. I think it was the drug came on the market in the early 2000s. It's 2021, and we are still living in the opioid epidemic. Still, 21 years later, because this company wanted to make billions, and they fucking did.
The scary part is they still wanted more. They never reached the potential that they hoped to reach.
Yeah, that's the other thing. This was cut off before they wanted to. There were plans for a 160 milligram tablet. That is a retarded amount of pill to just be dished out for. There were plans for children's Oxycontin,
a children's version, because that's what we really need.
This was and the way they hid behind people who really did need the drug. The way they said, oh, well, because you're saying that these people can't get it, now nobody can have it. What about the people who really do need it? And they hid behind that forever. And most of the addicts were the people who really did need it. And that's what else are you supposed to say? You really did take a big chunk out of America, and it's never coming back. We're never going to be the same from this. Period.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those. The ripples are going to continue for quite some time. I don't think in our lifetimes we'll see the end of what's been done.
So people are leaning to another, what's scheduled in some states, but in some states it's not. It's Kratom, which is very addictive and very dangerous.
I've heard about it, but I've never done anything with it.
I've only heard a little bit about it, but from the people that I hear it from, they talk about it like it's like the safest thing in the world. You can just go get it. It's not a big deal at all.
Until you start taking it and you learn that your body metabolizes it the same way as opioids. So basically, it fools your brain into thinking you've had hydrocodone or any opioid because it's very closely related. Mm-hmm. But that being said, it affects your pain receptors. And just like from withdrawals, when you take opioids, it actually affects the way you perceive pain. So when you come off of it, you have an extreme level of pain that you had no idea was coming. But as soon as you come, that's one of the reasons why you have to go get your fix, is because you start to physically hurt. And it's very, I don't know how you explain it, but I just remember it just fucking sucks. But that being said, Kratom does the same thing. And so what people that take it, yeah, it's super safe when you're taking it, but it has the same withdrawal and the same after effects as opioids. So it's completely safe. Yeah, but you're probably going to end up spending $400 or $500 a month on it. And if you try to come off of it, you're going to be in pain for a month, and it's got the same kind of withdrawals as hydrocodone. I remember I had a friend introduce me to it who was also an opioid addict that told me the same thing. And I tried it, and it feels exactly like hydrocodone. And I can tell you that it was so similar that I was like, hell no, that's too good to be true. And then I started reading up about it, and there's a lot of Kratom paid sponsored material out there, but there's also a lot of addicts saying, hey guys, this stuff is just as addictive, just as hard to come off of. And so I wanted to bring it up because if people are listening to this, a lot of addicts tend to try to substitute. Methadone's a good example. And those are for people that have to have it. But Kratom is not a safe alternative. It is if you really read up on it, this stuff is dangerous. And the quantities that they sell it at in the United States aren't the way it's used in Asia. Just wanted to get that out there.
Well, then another thing, and I feel like it just goes to show that weed fixes everything. The way I got off opioids was cannabis, marijuana, weed. It was using weed for my nausea, using it for my pain, using it for, and again, I know it sounds like I'm sounding like I'm an addict, but it's just fucking weed. You know what happens when I don't get weed? You know what happens when I don't get weed? I'm fucking cranky. You know what happened when I didn't get fucking my OCs? I kicked in your fucking door. You see the difference?
Well, and that's here in Colorado, they have a lot of addiction therapies and things like that. I live in Colorado, and they call it the exit drug here. So doctors prescribe it. Doctors prescribe it to addicts, specifically opioid addicts, because it helps with all the things that you were talking about. And it is legitimized in California and Colorado. So much so that they're seeing a better success rate with marijuana than they are with methadone and Suboxone. I can't ever say it. I was never on it. They didn't invent it.
It's like Suboxone or Suboxone or some
shit. Yeah, Suboxone. That shit wasn't invented when I was an addict. So.
And that's the one that fucks me up. Suboxone was supposed to keep you from being able to get high, and they found a way to get high off of that too. So I feel like we need to stop looking at opioids as a medicine, and we need to remember that it's just a goddamn poison. And there are so many alternatives to this horrible fucking drug that, I mean, okay, yeah, if you need to be fucking anesthetized to sleep, There you go. There's your opium. If you're coming fresh off of fucking surgery and you need that kind of painkiller, okay, fine, cool. But I just feel like there's no real need for it. And like you said, it changes the way you feel pain receptors. You never feel pain the same way again, and it hurts more. It doesn't even help with your pain. It just gets you so fucking high you don't feel it until you come
And,
off.
and that's the point of like my suffering comes from today is I have pain that I feel like I wouldn't have if I never was exposed to this stuff. I feel like I hurt all the time, and um, it's just that's my regret, I guess, as it were. I feel like I hurt all the time, and the therapies that I have available to me, I'm pretty rigid on what I'll take. So it's Motrin and water, or Tylenol and water, and
Yep, it's changed my entire prospect or thought process on when I go to a doctor. If I have pain or if I go to a dentist, I've had blood coming out of my mouth telling a doctor I non-narcotic when they ask what kind of painkillers I want. I'm adamant about it.
I'm never.
It's never touched my system again, and that's the thing. The only way to win is to get away from it entirely.
Yeah, and that
And it bites you so bad that you'll literally. I'd rather go to the dentist and fucking hurt than go down that road again.
Yep.
Just without a doubt.
I'll deal with 2 weeks of pain instead of fucking losing a month or 3 months of my life. And the other thing that we haven't talked about, but I will talk about, is relapses. What people don't know about relapses is you've changed how much you can take. So the next time you do it, if you try to use your regular amount, that's why you fucking die. And I've lost a lot of friends that way. And just get clean, guys. I know that sounds horrible to say the way I just said it. Smoke some weed, find some friends, talk to somebody. You can beat this. You can. If there's any message,
and get some help. There's no shame in calling. There's no shame in raising your hand and going and get addiction help. Quite literally.
We'll probably put an addiction hotline number in the actual comment section. We'll make sure that we put some of that shit in there. I want to thank you, Anthony, for coming on and doing this with us.
Yes,
I know this was hard. It wasn't easy for me either, but I felt like it needed to be said, and I can't thank you enough. I appreciate it, man. Thank you.
I appreciate the opportunity.
All right, guys. Next week we'll be back
to our regular zany fucking selves,
to lighten the mood, and I hope that we can help somebody to be able to reach out. Thanks again, Anthony, for being on with us. We'll catch you guys on the next one.